Hey guys, this is Miko. I wanted to do an up-to-date guide on all the PTR changes as a whole and visually kind of put those together and see what you can see. From a Blunderbuss perspective, they got a slight blast shot buff, but I wouldn't say it's anything super significant. It looks like it could be used to kind of get through chokes a little bit more. The haste kind of runway is actually pretty large now, but overall not much of a change. Bow AoE got buffed, but the single target aspect got nerfed. That being said, I don't know if AoE bow is really a thing that people have tried in a very long time. Maybe with refreshing evasion it's possible, but I don't really see it being the thing that people are really looking to experiment with a lot, since it's a lot of kind of pad oriented damage generally. If people figure out a way to make that work though, it could be viable. Firestaff got a lot of buffs and a Pillar Fire nerf. The actual bug for Firestaff abilities not being affected by Invigorated Punishment has been fixed too, so Firestaff overall got a net buff this patch, but with the blocking changes, I don't really see Firestaff or Bow kind of taking off and doing as much as they did before. But overall, still say they're in a pretty healthy spot. GreatAxe, Execute got buffed, Whirlwind got buffed, and Reap got buffed. I think Reap will still be nichely used. Execute is weirdly okay now, I think at small scale. And then Whirlwind, it feels like it could be viable and maybe even just significantly better than Charge on from a point perspective. Feels super, super fluid right now. Big fan of the Whirlwind change, but everything else feels in the right direction. I just wouldn't say super, super great overall. Moving on to the next weapon here, Hatchet. We have some ranged buffs and a refreshing or Raging Torrent kind of tracking rework. I'd say the Raging Torrent rework isn't super significant. From a PvP perspective, it's still not enough of a kind of targeting increase, but the actual social distance throw is super, super strong now since it's a guaranteed route, and it will work on the ability where if someone is within 6 meters, that will get a cooldown. So that seems like it could be very, very viable from a light melee perspective, could be viable from a bow perspective again, and could be viable from maybe even a healer perspective. Would say that change alone makes it so Hatchet is in the conversation again of offhands to run, even though the ult isn't as great anymore. Greatsword got a Roaring Rupture buff. It feels like it could be decent, but it's not that big of a change overall, in my opinion. The Skyward Slash got a really big nerf. I'd say Greatsword's in a weaker spot with that for sure. I would say Skyward Slash, you only want to go like one perk into it right now in general. It does not seem like it's very, very strong on a PTR, but seems okay overall. Ice Gauntlet kind of got a Ice Pylon rework that I don't exactly have seen the effects of. Feel like it's a bug fix more than anything. And Wind Chill kind of got a small buff, but I would say Wind Chill still is not good enough for it to really be viable. It looks okay, but I wouldn't say it does enough right now. Wind Chill as a whole kind of needs some sort of flamethrower-esque treatment where it doesn't really have much of a cooldown on it. Otherwise, I don't see Wind Chill really being used for a lot of things since it locks you in a animation for a while. You can't really get a lot of value during that, and it's just overall weak. Musket got Powder Shot and Powder Burn upgrades are able to be used during your reloads now, which is really, really nice, or you don't actually have to reload into them. So it seems like that's a pretty significant change, but Musket as a whole with the bloom effects, I'd say just feels weak. You could also switch between them, doesn't use up a shot, you can't stack them unfortunately, but overall it seems like it's in the step in the right direction for Musket, like not OP shoot you across the map, but has some significant damage output still if timed correctly. So it seems like Musket has the potential there, but I don't think anyone has really figured out a way to make it work yet. Spear has had a pretty big Cyclone buff. It feels like it's actually viable from using that to get your stand back consistently. Viable as a life stealing skill. Could very easily see this being meta with SNS, just because the SNS bulwark kind of got reworked and no longer is gonna work off of Runeglass dot gem. So this would be a really easy way to get your stamina back and allows you to kind of always have your shield up, and the shield on this next patch looks bonkers, but I'll get to that in a minute. Moving on to Warhammer, Mighty Gavel and Armor Breaker both have gotten buffs. Mighty Gavel, I'd still say, is more of an individual combat, like 1v1, 3v3, PvE kind of skill. Armor Breaker seems really, really good on paper. Armor Breaker I could very easily be seen being meta again over Leeching Path of Destiny from a melee perspective. The Mighty Gavel change where you have a secondary charge seems like it's pretty cool. You can't charge the secondary, you get both charges at the same time. You can't just use one and then it charges up. You get both charges back at the same time. It seems like it's okay. I just wouldn't say it's super, super great. The main aspect that's better over heavy is a little bit faster animation, but the conditionals for some of the perks on it just make it really not that usable. Rapier, Flurry, and Tondo got some reworks. I'd say overall this is kind of a net smaller nerf from a PvE perspective. From a PvP perspective, it's a slight buff, but Bleed Rapiers never has been viable in large-scale PvP. They could be viable in a 1v1 slash 3v3 environment, but with cleanse pots being in the game, it just makes it so that this is not really possible to start stacking and start getting a ton of value, because people will just cleanse it if you try to go for too much on one person. But from a PvE perspective, this is kind of interesting for the Tondo change, but the Flurry change, I believe, is a net damage nerf overall. But the tracking change on it feels super fluid and feels pretty nice. Void Gauntlet got a really interesting tether change, and Essence Rupture had a cooldown reduction change, so it's 0.75 seconds instead of 1 second every time it works, or the Refreshing Harvest. The Roaring Rupture, or the Rupture one, I don't think is a really big change, but the tether change seems really significant. Very easy to see this being used as an offhand. Does not give you CDR if you use another weapon while that is out, which is noteworthy, but it does give you the empower and does weaken the target, which could make it very easy to be used as an offhand with a lot of weapons right now. And I could very easily see that being used again from like maybe an AoE healer perspective, maybe from a we'll see what the new weapon is. Sword and Shield got a lot of changes. The most significant of which by far is the aura change, which is from 3 to 4 meters. You'll see it here in a second when I actually hold shield, but oh my gosh, this thing is massive now. It is super buffed. Could very easily see 2 of these being viable in a war perspective instead of 1, which is the current meta right now. Feels like that will actually be usable in PvE since a lot of people will be able to use that. All the changes here feel super fluid, feel super good with the actual changes to using abilities and getting out of those animations sooner. But I'd say overall, this is more of a tank SNS buff. And from a DPS perspective, there's a little bit of buffs here and there, but I wouldn't say it's a significant. I think they kind of missed on this change, and SNS is really strong right now. And a lot of people are hoping it would get nerfed, and instead it got buffed. So I don't know what numbers they're looking at, but SNS feels like it was and still is the strongest weapon in New World. And yeah, that's what I have for this video, guys. There's also some Lifestaff changes, but they're not super significant. It was to clap. The biggest change with that is that will work in a raid group. It appears to heal everyone in a raid group, so very easily meta in a raid until that gets fixed. But from a PvP perspective, I don't see it being as viable. Even though the heal has gotten buffed, the range nerf overall just makes it a lot weaker than it used to be. The main reason why people used it before is when people were super split, you can just heal everyone, and you're not able to do that now, so I don't really see that being super impactful. But let me know what you guys think of these changes. I think a lot of them are in the right direction. They missed on a couple, but overall, very positive, and looking forward to the update. And I'll see you guys in the next video.